There's a certain point where spending more money on your bike goes way past the point of diminishing returns and you get a nicer bike but not necessarily a better bike. And you end up paying more for bling than any appreciable difference in ride quality, speed, or comfort. You know, the stuff that actually matters when you're riding your bike instead of just taking pictures of it. Here's how to build a baller bike on a budget. The Soma Rush is the epitome of a nice bike that isn't so nice that you have to lie to your spouse about how much it costs. And local Sacramento fixed gear rider Case built up his Soma Rush so reasonably that it hits the sweet spot that balances comfort, speed, reliability, fun, price, and fixie points so well that it would even make your dad that drives a 2014 Lexus proud. Well, most of it. Back in the day before that fateful spring of 2020, you could nab yourself a Soma Rush for as reasonably priced as $450 US. Times have changed now and Soma Rushes were retailing for a whopping $700 for a hot minute. To put into perspective how expensive that is, you can get a used NJS bike, which are some of the nicest steel bikes that money can buy, for around $700. But thankfully it seems the great bike inflation of the past 2.5 years has slowed down, and now the Soma Rush sits at a more expensive than usual but reasonable $600. And Case built up his Rush as the mid-baller frame set that it is. This thing just screams to have not top shelf but pretty nice components on it. To put in perspective how expensive it is to build a bike, if you want to use mostly new components, look to spend around $1,000 and that will get you a pretty basic but reliable fixed gear. A truly baller fixed gear would cost at least $3,000 and then your imagination is the limit from there. Just looking at this Soma Rush build, I'd estimate that it costs around $2,000 with a combination of new and used components. Firmly at the crossroads between baller and budget. But even so, Case said that he spent more on this bike than his 1980s Celica. He's got his priorities in the right place. Although the Soma Rush remains a level-headed fixed gear purchase, it still comes equipped with features that'll make even veteran fixed gear riders nod in agreement. Soma constructs the Rush out of Tongay Prestige tubing, and if you only judge tube sets based on whether they have a bird on the sticker or not, you need to grow up. Small top-tier frame builders in the 80s and 90s flocked to the Japanese-made Tongay Prestige tubing because it was just one of the nicest tube sets that you could build a bike out of. Since Tongay Prestige came in a bunch of different wall thicknesses and diameters, it was a really versatile tube set to build with. Legendary frame builders the world over chose Tongay Prestige from Italian Rawson, American Ritchie, and Japanese NJS builders like Gonwell, Bridgestone, and Panasonic. And yes, the same Panasonic that makes your electric toothbrush also makes some of the best steel track bikes ever. But that's a story for another day. The Rush's version of Tongay Prestige, based on the weight of the frame set, is likely close to the Reynolds 725 tubing on the Wabi Classic Thunder and Special. Speaking of Wabi, this video is sponsored by them. For lightweight steel frame sets built with the aforementioned and venerable Reynolds 725, or the even lighter weight Columbus Spirit tubing that constructs the Wabi Lightning, Wabi's got you covered for steel bikes that balance comfort, speed, reliability, and a fun ride quality that will convince you once and for all that steel is real. And good news, the Wabi Thunder that can fit gargantuan 700 by 50C tires for all your track crossing needs, and the ultra-light Wabi Lightning are back in stock for both frame sets and complete builds. And if that's not enough for you, Wabi has a dope selection of fixed gear parts from Velocity, H+ Sun, Brooks, Sugino, Nitto, Thompson, and more to help you build a buttery bike of your dreams that's worthy of a bike check. Check out Wabi Cycles, linked in the description. The Soma Rush is basically an NJS bike made practical. Although the Rush is made in Taiwan instead of Japan to keep the cost down, it's apparent that the builder puts the utmost care in constructing them with some of the tidiest TIG welds humanly possible. It keeps the zippy true track geometry, but updates it with a modern lugged straight blade Tongay Infinity fork and clearances in the front and rear for 32C tires without brakes, compared to NJS bikes' measly 25C clearances. But someone knows that most people will ride the Rush on the streets, so they keep the fork and brake braids drilled for brakes, presumably to keep their customer base alive long enough to sell them even more bikes. And the Rush will keep you hydrated with a single bottle boss on the C-tube, and Case has the adorable PDW Lucky Cat for his. Although the Rush doesn't call so much attention to itself besides the satin purple that's so saturated you could taste grape Jolly Rancher, you'll see delightful touches from the Japanese print-inspired Sutro Tower Soma badge, the extremely subtle Rush lettering on the C-tube, NJS-inspired side tack seat stays, and S-bend chainstays for more crank and tire clearance that still make me feel ways that a bike shouldn't. And the mint Tange dropouts tie these handsome accents together. It's easy to glance over the Soma Rush and just write it off as another steel fixed gear. But when you take the time to inspect the frame set closer and walk around it, you'll see that there's an underlying dopeness from every angle, inside and out. Encase echoes the color scheme of the classic styled head badge with another classic Japanese art form. He opted for some of the finest in steering with a matching Tange 11 threaded headset. A clean negative 17-degree Nitto Dynamics stem runs parallel to the top tube with an extra dingy brass spur cycle bell hidden on the quill for maximum symmetry and aerodynamics. Probably. The bars are impeccable parts bin quality track drops, track wrapped with wine red Nubomb's cloth tape for extra texture without the bulk and dampening of thicker bar tapes to keep the feel as lively as possible. A set of aluminum Nitto bar ends give the cockpit an extra sense of panache and quality for only $20. The very definition of balling on a budget. The most elegant seat post on planet Earth, the Nitto S65 Crystal Fellow holds up a Brooks-inspired, but far from duplicated, no-name saddle. But hey, as long as the saddle's comfortable, it doesn't matter where it came from. A set of MKS Sylvan tracks, MKS deep twin toe clips, and actually baller wine red Toshi double straps give the rider a comfy platform to pedal the bike. Yes, you could certainly build a bike with more baller contact points that have NJS stamps, but if you're not a pro Kirin racer, you really don't need that. And the standard non-NJS Nitto Tange and MKS components have a similar level of quality to those NJS components at a fraction of the cost. But the straps are actually one area we're spending a little bit extra. Well, okay, a bit extra for that NJS certification is actually appreciable in day-to-day use. In a vacuum, the eye-watering $150 for the NJS-approved Toshi double straps seems firmly in the baller category. But once you see how a lot of non-NJS straps can stretch when backpedaling or skidding, the bomb-proof Toshis seem much more reasonable when you take every pedal stroke and even your safety when riding brakeless into consideration. A set of vintage Sugino Super Mighties that can be had for as low as $150 bring old-school fluted flair while still maintaining stiffness for sprinting with the track standard 144 bolt center diameter that fixed-gear riders learn to expect. A more modern altered vinyl chainring balances out the traditional Super Mighties to keep the drivetrain from looking like it came straight off your grandpa's bike. A 17-tooth EAI Superstar cog pairs with the 48-tooth chainring, making for perhaps the most popular fixed gear ratio ever. A gold KMC S1 chain strings the drivetrain together, because why spend $80 on an NJS chain when you can spend $15 on a chain that functions exactly the same for anybody that doesn't have a track podium finish to their name? A lot of you are going to disagree with me on this, and if you do, just please be civil about it, but wheels are the most overrated component on the bike. They're perhaps the biggest vanity part on the bike since they're big and attention grabbing, but don't necessarily make for a more durable or even faster bike the more you spend on them. A set of baller American-made hubs from Philwood, Paul, or White Industries will cost you around $500 for the pair. And if you want to go the NJS route, that's $400 just for the hubs. Not even talking about the rims, spokes, and nipples and the labor to build the dang wheel set. All that money just for something that looks nice. For some people, that's worth it. Hell, I'm thinking about building a baller endgame wheel set pretty soon, but don't get me wrong, it's not because it's going to make me faster, be more durable, or more attractive to the opposite sex. It's simply because they're gonna be sick. The best way to make your bike faster is to be more aerodynamic. A set of race-ready aero wheels will reduce your drag by a measly 2 to 3% for the low price of $3,000 or more. Lowering your handlebars by just 2 centimeters, on the other hand, reduces your drag by 5%. That's double the aerodynamic gains of wheels for absolutely free. Case still has nice wheels on his Rush with H+N archetypes laced with DT Swiss hubs with a lightweight 2024 spoke count to make it easier to wind up the bike from stops and carve corners more aggressively. Yeah, you could build up these rims in the same spoke count with a set of Philwood hubs for nearly double the price, but unless you're looking down at them, you'd be hard-pressed to find any difference. Pretty much in any hobby, the gooey mid-range balances price and quality the best. And spending more past the mid-range usually doesn't net you any appreciable difference. Instead, what you'll be buying is fixie points. And this Soma Rush is the perfect example that you don't have to buy the most expensive components to build a genuinely great bike. If you want to have your fix here featured in this bike check series, you can check out the instructions on how to do that in the description. And Fixie famous shoutouts to Mario Perez, Brandon Black, David K. Giordazera, Julian Corona, Scott Palongi, and Zane Kolnick for helping to make these Fix Here videos possible through the support on Patreon. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous.